roll.
I'm Kathleen Lang. This is November 5th, 2002. We're at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the Air Force Museum. Interviewing Joe Virgilio.
Virgilio is correct.
Where were you born, Joe?
Dayton, Ohio.
1920.
20.
Dayton, Ohio.
June 17th. June, baby.
And when did you join, or were you drafted?
I was drafted on November 18th, 1941. I went to induction center at Fort Thomas, Kentucky. And I was there for 10 days, and I got my orders to go to Fort Eustis, Virginia, in the Coast Artillery. And I didn't like it, so I went to what we called in, so the office was the orderly room. You go see your first sergeant. So I told him my story. I didn't want to go there. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to get in the Air Force." And he said, "Well, what we can do, we'll give you a discharge for the convenience of the government for 10 days. And you take the oath and sign up for 4 years. When you were drafted, I don't know whether you knew this or not, but you were in for 18 plus 6 months. So.
But if you volunteered, you took the oath, you had more choice over what you got to do?
Right, that's right.
Okay.
So I did get in the Air Force. Why did I do that? I don't know. I always thought I'd like to get into the Air Force. I thought about it. In fact, I even went out to a small airport outside of West Dayton down here. Took a ride in an open air cockpit. Went around the field, cost me $20. Didn't like it a bit.
That was before the war, right?
Right.
Just out of curiosity, you wanted to try it?
Yeah. But I still wanted to go there. So I went to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, did my 6 weeks boot camp there. My first assignment was at Merced Army Air Base. It gets kind of confusing at times. Back then it was Army Air Corps, and it was a basic flying school to train pilots. Had 7 weeks. Aircraft and engine mechanic school. Worked on the flight line there. Taking care of these BT-13s. And this fellow was in a wheelchair. I go, he was out there too. He's one of them. But it was took us a while to start learning when you're young. Say when you're 21. When I was 21, I think when I went in, 22, something like that. But they sent us out when these student pilots would get 30 hours in their training. Well, we had auxiliary field all around that section of California. So they'd take us mechanics out there and give us a small toolbox and go out there with the pilot, and he goes out there and shoots landings for his training. That was one of our duties to do there.
And you took care of the airplane if anything went wrong with it?
We did, but we didn't know what was doing for sure. Outside of checking the oil, the battery, and the gas.
Did you have any mechanical training before you were ever in the Air Force?
No.
Or did you ever fool around with mechanical things?
Yeah.
So you had some mechanical interest.
Yeah, I overhauled a washing machine gearbox when I was a freshman in high school for my parents. That was most of it. I guess my background is when I went to high school, I took all the necessary courses to graduate, but I did a lot of the industrial arts stuff,
So
auto mechanics and printing and blueprints and you name it.
So you were going to be a mechanic in the Air Force?
I was a mechanic in here, started out as a mechanic. Aircraft and engine. We learned how to run the engine. taxi airplanes. We used to have alerts. West Coast out there, when there was a possibility that a Japanese submarine might be off the coast there. So we had these big dirt revetments. They're just like a U-shaped mound.
Mm-hmm.
So when this siren went off, forget how many times there was a steady siren or what, I don't remember now, but that was our time to jump in the airplane that we crewed and taxi it out to one of them revetments out there. That was in case the enemy would come in strafing. They could not do a whole lot of damage to the airplanes. This was a wild sight when you see a bunch of kids out there taxiing airplanes. I don't know how many was out there on that flight line, but it was an experience for us, I was there about a year.
Now that was 1941 when you enlisted, right before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
So you were already enlisted before Pearl Harbor happened.
Yes, I did. In fact, I was at Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. That Sunday morning, I was writing a letter to my brother-in-law, who was stationed at Schofield Barracks. And, but he was on duty someplace else out there in Hawaii.
So he survived.
Yes, he did. Yeah. But he came back injured.
How did you feel about that as a young soldier when that happened?
I felt bad about it. I really did. I didn't know there was actually going to get into a war, As a kid, we didn't understand it, really.
So now you were kind of scared, maybe?
Yeah.
Thinking, this changes everything.
But I wondered what we're going to get into next,
And all those ships destroyed and all those sailors dead.
Yeah.
It's a shock. Did
Yeah.
things change in the Air Force after that? Did they tighten things up and really start working you guys?
Yeah, restrictions. Yeah, we had a lot of restrictions. At Merced, I think we were allowed one 6-hour pass on a weekend.
Where would you go from Merced? Was there a town there?
Yeah, there was one town there. It's off Highway 99, and it would be Fresno, Turlock, Sacramento, north of us, about 100 miles. A bunch of little towns up on 99 through there.
Was it a wild time? You guys got released?
Wild time?
All
No,
those-
actually, it was one of my better assignments, I would think. Because we never wore civilian clothes, once the war broke out. So we could go any place we wanted by hitchhiking. Around a lot of times we'd go hitchhiking on Highway 99. We wanted to go someplace, and a lot of people would pick us up if you was out there on Sunday, or they'd invite you over to their house for dinner, stuff like that.
Oh, that was nice. So then, did you get shipped out someplace?
Yeah, I went to, well, I came home. I went home on furlough, got married. My wife and I drove back to California. Shortly after that, I got transferred to Las Vegas, Nevada, the air base there, which is now Nellis Air Force Base. But we really didn't know at that time why we were being sent there. We weren't told. But I figured it out later on that it was just a holding thing to get us to move into this new air base in Kingman, Arizona, which was going to be an aerial gunnery training school.
Aerial gunnery.
Flexible gunnery.
That was something new.
No. It was just, when I first went to Kingman, Arizona, I was held at Las Vegas, I think, about 3 weeks, and then he sent us over to Kingman Air Force Base. Brand new base, still under construction. And we had no runways. We used taxiways were finished, so the airplanes we had to start out with were these AT-6. They were actually advanced trainer for pilots, but we started out by training one aerial gunner student from a rear cockpit, open cockpit, with the gun mounted on the back of the fuselage. And then we had other AT-6s there that were used for tow targets. They had a long tow target. He would tow, they would fly by the student gunner, and the student gunner would fire at those targets. I forget how many feet that those targets run out, but they would. The student gunners all had different colored bullet tips, so they know
who hit it, who
scored.
didn't?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's why they started out training there.
And you were still a mechanic at this time?
I was still a mechanic.
Did you ever fly?
Yeah, later on here at Kingman Air Force Base. What I'm trying to get at was that when I first went there, we didn't have any refueling facilities on this base yet. So the airplanes had to fly to the Kingman City Airport, get refueled, and come back and land on the taxiways. That's the way they started out. It was all under new construction. When I first went there, we were crewing 3 airplanes at one time. AT-6s, a single engine airplane. And we would, I did have one of the tow target airplanes, I remember. It was just a pain in the neck because of the big long cable that had to be let out in the airplane, towed behind the airplane, you know, kind of get tangled up and be a mess to try to correct later on. Anyway, when the war escalated, this would be in 1943, the demand for aerial gunners became really high. You had to have them quick. So they would ship them into Kingman, Arizona, for 6 weeks training. And we moved from AT-6s to a 4-engine B-17. Our working hours increased to 12 hours.
A day?
12 hours a day. You either had a night shift or a day shift. You had your airplanes to crew, B-17s. We had no training on B-17. We got our training by on-the-job training. The guys that were in the Air Force, higher ranked people, you know, corporals, or not corporals, I was a corporal. Sergeants, staff sergeants, master sergeants, so on. But anyway, there became a time when they said, okay guys, we got to put some of you guys up in the airplanes now, flight engineers.
Well, what's the responsibility of a flight engineer?
Okay. Basically, a flight engineer has to take care of all emergency, like landing gears, flaps, you have to know.
Because you had to lower that landing gear by hand?
You had to lower it by hand. You also could retract it by hand, manually. You watch the instruments with the pilots, sit right in between them. And sometimes they'll make a mistake. They might miss something, and you'll see it, you'll catch it. And I learned a lot of that, not from anybody on the ground crews, like any of my flight chiefs at that time, but a lot of them from the pilots. I could be up there flying with the pilot. He's probably a year older than I am, about 22, 23, a lot of times too. So they asked a lot of questions of this guy. But the mechanics all the time was up there flying with them.
So you sort of learned as you went along.
Right. We did.
You all did, right?
Right.
How did you feel about these pilots and these people? They had to have a lot of courage, didn't they? To not having too much training and still be willing to get up there.
Well, yeah, we had a lot of guys dropped out of that flight engineer bit because of fear of flying. Also some pilots too. This happened too.
It's not an easy job, either one. So you start flying as a flight engineer then?
Yeah. Yeah, I did actually. One reason I made $60 more in a month. So that was one of the incentives, I guess. But we had a lot of good days, a lot of bad days out there. We had accidents there too. We had airplanes fly into the San Francisco peak up there one night, hit the mountain. That San Francisco peak's about 13,000 some feet. They hit it about 10,000 feet. And one of the worst things is to be selected to go out there to clean up that mess on a hillside like on a mountain, you know. Fortunately, I never did have to do it. We had part of the training there for the student gunners was to take live firing. I remember that. We had P-39s who would be attacked airplanes, and they would approach you from different angles, and the gunners would fire at them, but they had no bullets in there. They had cameras on their guns. Now we also had a sub base, which is called Yucca Flats. That's where we went to do the live firing for the training. That was just 20 miles over the Wallapai Mountains there. And you go down there and land up with the ammunition and stuff, and then you go out and shoot at targets on the ground.
Did you know what their plans for you were?
No.
Did you know you were going to get sent somewhere, or did you just, rumors would fly and you would just wait around and you never knew for sure?
That's true. One of the things I remember, this guy, Lou Thole, was a research volunteer here, wrote this story on the Kingman Air Force Base. He did a lot of interviewing with World War II vets, people who were actually stationed there and were gunners. He compared it as to the outbacks of Australia. That's what it was like. Kingman, Arizona, the population was 3,500. If we went downtown to the bar on Saturday night, you might be 15 to 20 deep. Get up to the bar. But anyway, after a while you get burnt out. You're working these 12-hour shifts, and so you're trying to get out. You're trying to say, hey, I want to be transferred. I want to go overseas, you know. It wasn't that easy. You had to, you're in the service and you do what they tell you, you know. So one day I was walking through the operations building. My engineering officer asked me, he said, hey, how would you like to go to Lynn, Massachusetts General Electric plant? Said they have an opening up there for B-29, oh no, turbo superchargers. It was a school, General Electric plant. And would you like to go? And I said, yes, I'd do anything to get out of here. So I went there for a month, and they put us up in an old schoolhouse, and we had the mock-ups of the B-17, the B-24, P-47. There was one other aircraft which I don't recall now, but they had these turbo superchargers, and they supported the fuselage or wherever they're mounted on that particular aircraft, and we would take them out, put them back in. That was all our training. So we had some desk work too to do, you know. So I thought, oh boy, now I'm going to be a supercharger specialist, you know. So in those days, your classification was called an MOS. I don't know why. We had one for mechanic, we had one for flight engineer, and then for supercharger specialist, which I thought, oh man, this is going to be great. So what happened, I got transferred to Bakersfield, El Paso, Texas, B-29 base. At that time, the B-29s were having a lot of engine problems, overheating, burning up cylinders on the engines, and turbo superchargers.
Was the B-29 a bomber?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a big one with 4 engines on it?
Yeah. That's the one that dropped the bombs over Japan, B-29. But anyway, I thought, oh God, this is not too good. Well, it's not to my liking. From a B-17 to working. I was not on a flight line then. I was in what they called a sub-depot. And I remember I worked a night shift all the time. And every night, change a supercharger, cylinder on that engine, or we did a whole complete engine change.
Mm.
And you slept in barracks. Had no air conditioning. So it was quite difficult to sleep in the daytime. But I finally, I was put up for promotion there to a sergeant, and never got it because I got shipped overseas from there.
So from Texas, you went overseas?
From El Paso, Texas, yeah.
Did you go to Europe?
No, I went to China.
Burma?
Burma.
Oh. So you went to China.
Yeah.
Was there a base over there?
Well, I'll tell you a story on that. I was 2 days out to sea. The war ended.
So you were on your way to Burma when the war ended?
I was on my way to China on a troop ship. Left New York. We were at Fort Hamilton, New York, some Army base there. We were called, I remember we called out, we knew we were all going to go overseas.
You still didn't know where?
We knew where, but we didn't know who was going to go, sure. Because when they called us all out, they started calling out, the following names will fall out over here, and the others will fall out over here, and you guys over here, get your barracks bags and go back to the barracks. You're not going overseas. But that only lasted about 3 hours, and the sergeant comes into the barracks and said, fellas, you're going overseas after all. So they had a point system where you've been in so long, you got so many points for each year you're in the service. So I was pretty close to that, getting out. But that night they took us down to Hudson River, and we loaded up on the troop ship. Away we went. So we took the long way. We left New York, went across the Atlantic to Mediterranean, Suez Canal, Red Sea, Mediterranean, Red Sea, Bay of Bengal, and went from the Bay of Bengal, went 85 miles up the Hooghly River, and that's where we docked, and that was at Calcutta, India. Stayed at Calcutta, India actually had orders to go to Shanghai, but we landed in Kunming. And we really didn't know why. I thought, well, we're going to be here a few days and I want to go on to Shanghai. That didn't happen. That was changed. We stayed. First got there. I was supposed to be assigned to the 69 Depot Repair Squadron. It's okay. So it's a group of us mechanics. They load us up on trucks and haul us around different bases over there. And every place we went, said we don't need any mechanics. We're shipping our people back home. We don't need you guys.
So you made that
So
long
that went on
trip.
for about.
You made that long trip, all the way over there, and
We
then
did 28 days. Anyway, we rode the trucks and we ate sea rations and slept in a graveyard one night, I remember. We finally, I know, we stayed in Kunming, and that was just a big tent city for processing people coming back to the United States. So what was my duty? I was a guard.
a guard.
I was a guard on the main gate, and at that time the Chinese communists were on our side, along with the nationals, Chinese nationals.
But were they?
Because they were.
Were the nationals and the communist enemies? The
No,
Chinese?
They were, at that time, they were on the United States side. Both of them.
But were they enemies with each other?
They both were fighting the Japanese.
Okay. But did the communists usually not get along with the nationals, the Chinese?
That I don't know, because I was not there that long. But I do remember my duty was at night on the main gate, and these communist soldiers, I can remember coming through, marching through our camp. Our tent city was one of the main roads going through there. My partner was a Chinese nationalist, so neither one of us could understand each other. But he wanted to buy my cigarettes, I remember that. But you get about 3 packs a month or something. But I was very fortunate I didn't have to stay over too long, because I was only gone about a little over 4 months. Returned back to the United States.
Did you have any problems? I mean, was there ever any fighting around there? Or did
No.
anybody try to sneak in or anything like that?
No.
Never had any problems?
No, we had more, really the only problem we had was with the Chinese civilians. In this big tent city, they would come in and steal clothing and stuff off of us.
Was it your job to keep them out as a guard?
The whole perimeter of the camp was guarded, but they still found their way in.
Had they had a rough time in the war and they were poor and they really didn't have
Yeah.
anything at that time?
There was a lot of black market going on too. We had one little Chinese man come in there, they called him Black Market Joe. He'd come in with his black overcoat, and he'd buy khaki shirts, pants, and all this stuff, and he'd put all this stuff. But he'd come in the daytime, he'd put all this underneath that big black coat and walk back out. He'd go downtown, Kunming down there and sell it. Black market. You'd find soap, toothpaste, watches. You'd find all that down there.
And a pack of cigarettes would buy you just about anything.
Pack of cigarettes,
It was like everything was traded instead of money.
Oh, I mean, between Americans and the Chinese. No, they just wanted to buy them. I didn't smoke them, so I would get them and I would sell them for $1 a pack, so give me $3. That's the way it worked.
And you started the war before Pearl Harbor, and you stayed in all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And you traveled almost halfway around the world.
Right.
How was that for a young man from Dayton, Ohio?
It was great. I always say, at least I didn't get to travel some, you know.
Did you see anything traveling, or were you just restricted
Yeah,
to?
we never got off the ship, but we docked in Port Said, Egypt. We refueled. We went coast of North Africa. I saw the island of Sicily. What else?
You said Calcutta.
Suez Canal.
Mm-hmm.
Places like that.
What was life like traveling on a ship like that? Did you have like a hammock that you slept in?
That's right, we did.
One on top of the other?
Yeah.
A lot of guys squished into a small space?
What you do, you try to get the top one, because if somebody gets seasick on there, has to throw up.
You don't want to be underneath it.
You don't want to be underneath it.
And how was the food on the ship?
We had, these were Navy, run by the Navy. We had a lot of baked beans for breakfast.
That doesn't sound too good.
We had our dining room was wasn't called a dining room, it was called a galley. There were just top bars like that, and you stood up to eat all the time.
Could you take a shower on that ship?
Yeah, it was salt water. Yeah, we took showers on it.
And before you went all the way to China, did they give you like 4,000 shots and all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff?
we had lots of shots.
Because you were going to be exposed to lots of different cultures and people.
We did. We had a lot of shots.
Did anybody still get sick?
Yeah. I remember that induction center. They usually hit you on both sides. And you would go through a small line and put you in a building that's cold, no heat, and they're giving you these shots, and you guys are passing out a lot too.
Hmm.
But I'd like getting back to that. It wasn't, for a young guy, it was really something to get to go halfway around the world.
And you weren't in too much danger,
No.
so that made it better. You could
Never.
enjoy seeing all these places, and you probably met young men from everywhere.
Yeah, we did.
Friends that you still have, maybe?
A lot of them are gone. Of course, we're all up in our 80s now, so that was one of the things I was wondering about. Why is the Library of Congress doing this now? Why didn't they start earlier?
You know, they told us to give priority to World War I veterans when we started.
Really?
As if we could find one of them still. No, I agree, they did way too long.
Well,
Fortunately, there's still lots of you guys around still to tell us.
overall, there's so many of us right down here in the museum. I worked here at the base. I started work here 3 weeks after I was discharged from the Air Force.
As a civilian?
As a civilian. I worked here 31 plus years. My association with the Air Force now is going into this 37th year.
And now you're a volunteer here at the museum. So you must really like the Air Force.
I like the Air Force. I like talking to feelings from other people. Visitors that come in here, like one time I had a World War II Navy vet. Came up to the desk, and I work in a modern flight hangar down here. He come up there and he said, would it be okay if I brought some of my family up here to meet you? He said, you know, we're part of the greatest generation. I said, yeah, that'd be fine. He said, I want them to come up here and shake hands with. I didn't know this. It was on a family reunion. So it was about 16 people in that group.
So you're treated well, and people
Oh, yeah.
are very respectful for your service?
A lot of them come up and say, hey, thank you.
How does that make you feel?
Good. I feel real good.
Did you feel like you were making a big sacrifice in 1941 for your country?
I never thought about that too much. It's something that we had to do, you know. Everybody was going in the service. I went to high school, had a chance to go out to try out for scholarship at Ohio Western College football, and that canceled all that, of course, and some of my other plans, but yeah, really you didn't think too much about it because everybody in that age group was going.
A lot of people made a lot of big sacrifices, I'm sure. Many of your friends, people that you knew.
Yeah.
A lot of people paid a big price. Did you ever think during all that, when the war was raging, that we might not win?
Yeah.
It must have been a scary thought.
We used to always think about it. We talked a lot about it too. Especially when I was at Kingman, Arizona, we discussed the war a lot. And when the war started downgrading, when we were beating the Germans pretty good and the Italians over there, you know, we felt a lot better about it.
So it would be a little bit of a relief
Right.
that we might come through it okay. It dragged on a long time.
Yeah.
Some people probably wondered, will this ever end?
For 4 years.
It's a long time. It's your youth. I mean, you spent
4 years, 2 months.
a long time in your youth with that kind of fear and worries, and you guys just got the job done.
Yeah, I did. We never thought I'd, we worked 12 hours a day, Kingman, sometimes 14, whatever was present. Out there, a lot of good experience out there. I really credit my mechanical abilities that I got at Kingman Air Force Base on the B-17s.
So it was valuable to you, the
Oh,
experience.
very valuable.
I've seen pictures of these planes that would go out on a bombing run. They come back and they're missing the tail and the wings cracked off and there's holes all over them. And did you ever have to get a plane back like this and you're on the crew?
No, not.
And then they're supposed to be ready to go back out again in a few days. I mean, that must have been a tremendous job for mechanics.
Yeah, that was for them. That was over there. Yeah, I've met a lot of visitors down here that have worked that were overseas in Germany, in England, 8th Air Force over there. A lot of B-17s. That was one of the most famous airplanes of the war, you know, the B-17s.
Have you ever been involved in the groups here that restore the old planes? To take the wrecks and put them back?
No, I haven't, but the guy that I talked to out there in the wheelchair, he's one of them. He can no longer do this because he has some kind of a problem with his legs now, but he's been a volunteer here. There's 2 people who work here in restoration now that I work with here at Wright Pat, and we go all the way back to 1946 when we started here. They're still over there working.
So your experience with the Air Force, you would say, was very positive?
Very much so.
You respected the leadership and you felt like you were treated well as a soldier?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's all comes right back to my job. 3 weeks after I was discharged, I started working over here at Hangar 1,
Mm-hmm.
research hangar, and Hangar 9, which is the presidential airplanes.
And you took care of airplanes then for 31 years?
My most memorable ones is that I crewed a C-135. It's typical of the KC-135 fuel tankers. Yeah. Okay. So you know about that. I retired as a flight chief. I was in charge of nine, sometimes 10 of them. I'm flying about 40 mechanics.
So even though you were out of the service, you can continue to support the Air Force for 31 years?
I was a civilian employee.
Mm-hmm. Through
I had
Korea?
Pardon?
Through Korea, Vietnam?
Yeah.
But you weren't...
Some of our mechanics, we were mixed crews. Some were civilians, like myself. Some of them were military. Some of them went over to Vietnam and come back. Got reassigned here right back. So I had one Black Sergeant, Cliff Bennett, which I'll never forget. He has a garage over in Xenia, Ohio there now. He come back from Vietnam, and I was a flight chief, and he said, "Could you fix it up so I can come to work for you?" I said, "Sure." I signed him an airplane one time, and he said, "I don't want that piece of junk." But you know what? He fixed that airplane. I mean, he did a terrific job. And that airplane went to Norway. He had a trip to Norway on it.
That was a bonus. So after all that, 31 years working for around and with the Air Force, what would you say to people overall your experience was? How could you characterize your time in the Air Force?
I think it was great. After I look back on it now, yeah. Since then, I have belonged to the Hither Green Senior Center here in Centerville, outside of Dayton. Are you from Dayton? Okay. We have an aviation club there. Started out about 4 or 5 years ago. They had about 5 members. They had 90-some.
Mm-hmm.
We have pilots, mechanics, aerial gunners, widows of pilots from World War II. We all attend their meetings. We have speakers from all over. We had last 2 months ago, we had Lieutenant Colonel Von Johnson, retired. Now works over here on the Area A, Patterson Field. Flew B-52s from Guam to Vietnam to bomb. Tells the story of the 12-hour flights. The early model B-52s did not have Doppler radar, so navigation was a problem. And they would fly those 12 hours. They'd already had their briefing in Guam, their targets. He said how tough it was to fly that 12 hours, refuel airplane, aerial refueling 3 times. How difficult it was to refuel, aerial refueling at night from KC-135 tankers, finding their targets over there. Sometimes they just dumped the bombs.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the interesting things that I enjoyed hearing him tell about the co-pilots, he said, one of the main jobs of the B-52 co-pilot was to be a plumber. He says, now you guys probably want to know what I mean. He said, well, when we're up there in the air and we're being refueled, his job is to manage the fuel panel. He's receiving all this fuel on board. It takes him about 15 minutes to load up the B-52. So he has to manage this to keep the CT of the aircraft. Right. So I thought that was an interesting story. I got into, as an employee here at the base, I started, they have a cold weather testing hangar down at Eggleston Air Force Base in Florida. 12 weeks down there on the early KB-50 in-flight refueling tankers. They put 2 jet engines on a KB-50 and we're trying to fly. That was one of the drogue, where there was like a big funnel, and they was set up to refuel a fighter. That was a tactical air command fighters. That was back in '56. We did 12 weeks of testing down there at Eggleston Air Force Base at climatic hangar, they call it. I got about 2 months schooling, I think, at Birmingham, Alabama. On that airplane, they were doing a modification. They were putting the jet engines on there. Why I was assigned it, I don't know. But we never knew for sure what we should be assigned to. I also had, after I returned here, I went to school at the Boeing plant in Wichita, Kansas, on the B-47. That was a 6-engine jet. That was a very good school. Factory schools are great, pretty good to them. I've worked on the B-36, like this one sitting out here behind the doors of the hangar. The modern flight hangar. I've worked on it about 4 months here. Not that particular one.
Did you feel like you had an important job in World War II?
Never thought of it. Oh, I thought, I thought being a flight engineer was something.
Air supremacy became the big thing.
Yeah, it did.
Air power became everything. I mean, we didn't even truly have Air Force by itself. It was Army attached Air Force, right? And now air power dominates.
Yeah.
You were in your career.
I grew up with it.
Covered that time.
The whole period.
When we were just learning to all the technology and changes. That's been an interesting thing to see in your life, hasn't it? All that development
Very
and
much
change.
so. I can remember my dad. My dad he was born and raised in Italy, and never did speak real good English. But I remember he was proud. His son, he'd introduce me to people, and said, my son's an engineer in the Air Force.
How did he feel about Italy being an enemy in World War II?
I didn't quite understand it, really.
He didn't?
No, he didn't. He couldn't understand it either. Why they're that way. He came over here, he was 17 years old. So.
Yeah. So he didn't have a bad feeling about you as his American son fighting against Italian people.
He was always worried about me being in the Air Force, I think.
He didn't want you to get hurt.
Yeah, I think that was one of his main concerns, yeah.
What would be your message, Joe, to the young Americans now about the Air Force and serving their country?
I think it's a good career for them, really do. I mean, it served me well here. All my travels I got to do here at out of Patterson Field here on this C-135, and the many awards that I got and letters of appreciation. some of the projects, like running a noise interference test one down at Air Force Base is supposed to take 3 hours. We had an instrumentated truck sit right in front of the airplane, right at the nose. And my job, and the flight engineer company on that airplane, I was a crew chief, he was a flight engineer. But my job was to run them engines at 100%. So I had to know all the time limitations. How long could I run this engine at 100% without damaging some interior parts of it, you know. So I cut it about 1 hour and 45 minutes. So I got a real nice award letter on that, so I really appreciate it. I've got one from pilots, where we had a range time, like out of New Mexico, Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, change what we call a sunstrand drive, which is a constant speed drive for driving a generator. So we want to make sure he got this airplane up there on time. So we worked that out. We were coming out pretty good, but installing it, we got one flown in from Wright. I talked to him, I said, now you go ahead and get up in the cockpit and get ready. Instead of us checking it out, you do it, it's okay, and you can just take off immediately. So the 3 of us got a nice letter on that. So that's why I think Air Force is a good thing for young kids to get into, because the mechanical thing now is all changed. Now it's specialists. You do one thing, you want to work the hydraulic system, fuel system, wheels, brakes, engines. That's when I retired, that's what I was getting to. Everything was a specialist.
Is there anything else you want to tell us, or?
What I was telling about is special note. When I started out, we did all these things ourselves. The only things we didn't do was radar, instruments, radio. We didn't do anything. No, not really. I think sometimes I talk too much about airplanes, but I do love to discuss them with visitors who come in.
Well, this is the perfect place for you.
Oh, it's a great place to
It's
be.
a great place to be.
Yeah, really.
Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Today.
I'm dry.
Oh, I know. It's a lot of talking.